Hello everybody, welcome back. If you've been following along with my portfolio as of recently, you know that I've been loading the boat when it comes to buying this certain ETF called SHG. SHG is the Schwab US Large Cap Growth ETF. SHG has returned 301%, not including dividends as well, over the last 10 years, which is absolutely insane. But with such great returns over the last 10 years and a historical market where companies like Nvidia are running up the entire world, why should I continue to buy this ETF? So today I'm going to be going in some insights when it comes to SHG. I'm going to also be sharing some data when it comes to trying to time the market, why you should continue investing throughout the years, and more. Thank you to my channel members Jacob, Redwood, and SoFi Boy Major Speed. I appreciate you all. On to the video.
Hello, I like money.
Over the last year, the S&P 500, which is basically VU or SPY if you want to invest in it, has had a total return, including dividends, of 109.71%. That's very good, and as I say, you should probably just buy the S&P 500 if you want to invest and grow your wealth. SHG over that time frame, though, has had a 150% return. Obviously, past performance is not indicative of future performance. We also can't ignore that we've been in a historical growth bull market. Like, some of the companies are just insane that SHG holds right now. Cough Nvidia. And I think eventually there's going to be an appropriate correction, but I think that's going to be one of the best times to load up on SHG, and I plan to as well. But should you be waiting on the sidelines for an eventual correction? Nvidia has had insane performance, and it makes up a good part of SHG. What if that goes down? What if some other growth companies go down? Do you want to try and time the market? Well, here's some data to kind of prove otherwise, but you should consistently invest in ETFs. Even I fall into this trap as well. It's very hard not to ignore some of the prices on some of the big tech companies that make up a big part of SHG, but you also just need to have a reaffirming mindset that over the long term, it will not matter if you're buying an ETF such as SHG or VU when you get in, as long as you consistently invest. And I understand it can be painful buying companies and ETFs at all-time highs like this. Schwab ran a study that basically took the returns of people who invested at different times. It gave the investor nearly $2,000 every year for 20 years. As no surprise, the investor with perfect market timing had the best return of $151,000. That's about $15,000 higher than the investor who immediately invested all their money just lump sum. You got to keep in mind though, it is nearly impossible statistically to time the market perfectly. Nobody can do it, not even professionals like Jim Cramer. Something that's interesting though is that the lump sum investor had a better return slightly by the person who dollar cost averaged in. I would consider myself a dollar cost average investor, as I love to just consistently invest throughout the highs and lows. The investor with bad market timing even had a respectable return of $121,171, which is literally impossible to do. It's lump sum investing, but you bought at the top. And the investor who left their money in cash had a return, not even a return because you're losing money to inflation, of $44,438. While prices may feel really high in the market right now, especially with some certain companies, it's important to keep in mind that SHG weighs their positions differently. They have criteria for valuations to buy in and out of companies, and over a long-term time horizon, you're still going to get a very good return with SHG. If you buy and pick individual stocks, it's pretty much guaranteed, like 95% of the time, that you're going to underperform the market, and you may get FOMO of being out of some positions. Now, as somebody who's not like a crazy growth fanatic, this really doesn't apply for me, but I do know a lot of people that want to invest in some of these companies, and it's just straight out overvalued, and you're probably going to underperform over a long-term time horizon. But with SHG, you get exposure to those businesses. For me personally, I don't own a company like Google right now. Like, I think it's a great business overall, but I'm not going to individually buy it. I get exposure through SHG, which I love. Obviously, the Mag 7 make up a good portion of the top 10 holdings right now in SHG, but there's still plenty of weighting and diversification. I love also that I get exposure to a company like Broadcom as well. Broadcom used to be an SHD. It gives me exposure to also fun ideas that I may not want to directly invest in, but I get some indirect exposure through the ETF. Company like Tesla, I'll be honest, I think Tesla's a really cool company. I really love some of the products. I think it's very interesting. I know that's kind of an unpopular opinion, but I would never directly invest into it. I just think that it just doesn't make sense. I also want to cover the criteria of SHG as well. It's just so nice because it's such a hands-off approach. I don't have the time to be going through all of this stuff, and the fund managers at Schwab will do it, and they're going to do it cold, calculated, and emotionless. They're not going to intentionally hold on to a company just because they like it personally, even if it breaks some of the criteria, which is definitely a problem for some investors. You just get emotionally attached to the company even if the earnings are in decline. The 6 rules of criteria is basically projected price to earnings ratio, projected earnings growth, price to book ratio, dividend yield, trailing earnings growth, and trailing revenue growth. I won't go into crazy specifics because you guys are all going to fall asleep, but the fund managers at Schwab definitely do have some key indicatives of, how a company will perform likely and fit into SHG. Here's the last piece of clear-cut evidence that I think should kind of convince you why you should should just buy ETFs and not individual stocks. This is something that's kind of hit me recently in like reality. This was the S&P 500 in 2000. This was basically 24 years ago. And for somebody who's investing for 20, 30, 40 years, it's very clear that you should try not to pick individual stocks. Because how many of these companies have had respectable returns since then, obviously. But it just goes to show in cycles of how companies go in and out, in and out. And yes, it can be an amazing businesses. But you look at some of these today, and they're just cigar butts. Look at AT&T, look at Pfizer, look at Intel. These are all companies that have just been kind of stagnant for a long time. What's to say this can't happen to some of the companies that are in SHG right now? This has kind of been something that's hitting me a lot recently, though, and it's, kind of made me go towards more an ETF-based approach, as some of the companies in my portfolio right now may be some of these cigar butts in 20 or 30 years. Even for somebody like me who loves to pick and choose individual stocks, I think it's very ignorant for me to ignore the fact that you should probably just buy ETFs and show. Now, as you guys know on the channel, I wanted to get basically a 15 to 10 ratio when it comes to SHG and SHD, 10% SHD, 15% SHG. I think I want to make it more of like a 20-10, maybe 25-10. Let that money compound like a mother effer every year, and I'll find some good ideas that I think make sense in a market. Investing a lot in ETFs, but also finding some really good ideas that maybe small cap companies, even some large caps as well, companies like Visa, Microsoft, Starbucks. If you appreciate the transparency of what I'm doing here on the channel, make sure to consider becoming a channel member today. For only $5 a month, you get exclusive episodes, my time, and attention. Thank you all for watching, especially when subscribing. Do doing it, stocks, not drugs. Have a good one.